So I think oftentimes in our modern mind, and maybe the last 150, 200 years, we have this idea of apocalypse as desolate. We have lots of visions of this dystopian future. We make lots of movies about this dystopian future, and my children are very good at making me differentiate between sci-fi writing and dystopian future writing. They don't have to be the same. We kind of have images maybe in our mind of the ground burning and buildings burning, coming down. In the last 5-6 years, a lot of people have been very interested. Not that we're not always interested, but there's been a heightened interest in end times or apocalypse or the book of Revelation. And when we see, and not just us, but any time period, when we see institutions failing, like what used to be there is no longer there anymore, with this big bulwark of some part of our culture or lives is gone, or it's failing, it's not providing what it used to provide or what it should provide, of course we turn to the end things to try to make sense of what we're experiencing in the present. We try to turn to the future end where things fail and then everything's remade in order to explain some of our anxiety and uncomfortableness with our present situation. So this is kind of an image that you'll see in movies, and if you read books about it, like that might sort of tumble around in your mind. But this image is about 700 years old. So this is an apocalyptic image, an end time image that the folks 700 years ago in the area that it was made, they put this together. And I don't know, well, I'll just point out some things. First, there's fire coming from the sky. That's what fire from the sky looks like in their minds. And the ship, the mast is broken down. And if you notice, there's an angel sounding, and this just happens to be the second trumpet. The symbol, the trumpet, a symbol of like a call that everyone can hear. And then the ocean or the sea has that middle part, or just slightly right of middle, that's red. It's representing a third, like in the book of Revelation, there's these images of a third of the seas and lakes and rivers and creeks and streams had turned to blood, right? How worse, like how much more terrible can it get? And then a third and the fish die. And so there's actually some fish belly up in the water here. People trying to row away with their children in tow, right? So that's an image from 700 years ago. And while we might think of, because we've seen some images, skyscrapers falling, this one, they were concerned with all the fish dying, and the marine life, and the aquatic life, frogs and toads and whales, right? They were concerned that their nets would not be full when they went fishing, because they relied on that protein and those calories. And then fire from the sky. I like that one. Here is an image. Here's another one. This is an image from 500 years ago. 500 years ago in Germany. So this is a German conception of this beast with multiple heads that has crowns and horns, and then one head gets cut off, but it splits into two or something like that. And then some wild, imaginative creature in the background. Again, here's fire from heaven. This is their image of fire from heaven, using the paint and the imagination that they have. And then there are folks who, on the right, what would you say, how would you describe those people? So they kind of look like they're praying, Cindy says, for forgiveness. What else? Anybody? This is where we talk.
They must be wealthy. They look kind of wealthy.
They are. Yeah, they're wealthy. They have bright colored robes and furs around the collar. And there are some that, at least one in the front, who has sort of a king's crown on. You can kind of just see him right in the middle, just his head. Yeah. What are they doing? Praying, pleading.
Begging.
Huh?
Begging.
That's what I thought. I thought begging.
Begging.
Yeah. And here's the image. The beast comes out of the sea, and the sea is a symbol for chaos because you can never control it. And even with all of our modern technology and knowledge, if you've ever been on the sea, you know that you still cannot control it. You know? And so this chaos comes out, and this beast. And the thing of it is, in the book of Revelation, the kings or people, maybe you and I, we made a deal with the beast that the beast would provide political, military, and economic provision for us, just as long as we went along with its dirty ways. Except that we end up finding that it took all of our power and lives away. So I think they're begging, they're praying. There's some begging hands or praying hands. Yeah. So like the imagination of apocalypse has changed throughout the 2,000 years, and even the folks that were Hebrew in the Old Testament, they had visions of the end, and they're different. Like our imagination comes up with different things. Well, in our text this morning, Jesus, In our text this morning, Jesus, he gives a prophecy. He says something about the temple, and I'm just going to read it, and then let's talk about it. It's 1 through 13. As he was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings. Do you see all these great buildings?" Jesus replied, "Not one stone here will be left on another. Every one will be thrown down." As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are all about to be fulfilled?" Jesus said to them, "Watch that no one deceives you. Many will come in my name, claiming I am he, and will deceive many. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars," I love that line, wars and rumors of wars, "do not be alarmed." It's actually, do not be afraid. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places and famines. These are the beginning of birth pains. You must be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and flogged in synagogues. On account of me, you will stand before governors and kings as witnesses to them, and the gospel must first be preached to all nations. Whenever you are arrested and brought to trial, do not worry beforehand about what to say. Just say whatever is given you at the time, for it is not you speaking, but the Holy Spirit. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. All men will hate you because of me, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. So that temple was actually built by a Herod. Herod funded it and had it built in the Jewish land as a sign both of his dominance and power, but also as a peace offering to the people of Palestine to stay chill, to stay calm. Rome's here, but look what we're going to do for you. And it was white stone. It was made of white stone. And the stones were cut like we would cut today, and they were huge. Plus, he wrapped it, a lot of the parts, in gold and silver. So if you are sitting on the Mount of Olives looking down at Jerusalem, it is going, in the sunshine, it is going to be shiny and brilliant. You think about a dull, monotone landscape, and then all of a sudden, in the sunlight, bam, here's the temple. And the disciples, they're just sitting there with Jesus. It's a private conversation between Jesus and his disciples, and they say, man, look at that. And Jesus is a buzzkill, isn't it? This is Debbie Downer at the best. He says, well, yeah, it is beautiful, but not one of those stones will be left on top of each other. The temple is going to be torn down. And it was. So maybe like 40 years later or so, it was torn down. And no stone was left on top of each other, except for the wall that's left today, which you may have seen on television, the Wailing Wall, and it has little cracks in it, and you or I, or devout Jewish people, can write little prayers on papers, roll them up, and slide them into the Wailing Wall. And maybe some of you have been there and done that. That wall's left. So either Jesus was being figurative, or, well, I guess he was being figurative, because there's a wall still left. This was, the platform for this was 1,500 feet by 900 feet. 1,500 feet by 900 feet. So that's 500 yards, or 500, it's, right? 500 yards, meters, 300 yards, meters. Wait a minute, 15 divided by 3 is 5. Yeah, 500 yards of meters. So if you're thinking about racing around a track and just sort of lay that out, and then 900 feet across. But then it was 150 feet tall. So it's pretty much an effort to get that done. And then you think about the effort to take it down. 150 feet tall. How tall is Teachers College? Anybody? 11 stories? Yeah, how much is a story on that building? 11, would you say? 15 feet? So 15 times 10 is 150. So let's just compare it if our estimates are right. The height of it was Teachers College. So you know, it's not, if you get up on a high spot right here, or if you get up on the roof of the church, you can see Teachers College. Now imagine if it was white stone covered in gold and silver, and the sun was shining, and there was nothing else around, right, except like little block buildings. That's pretty brilliant. So they're looking at this tall thing, and 150 feet wide as well on the platform. It's massive, absolutely massive. And Jesus says, well, I just want you guys to know it's all going to be torn down. And that launches them into this discussion of the end times. But it's kind of vague. Like, there's some details, but they're not, anybody could say this, right? Anybody who's studied the scripture could say this. There's no special detail in here. He doesn't give any private information. And the thing of it is that our theology from the scriptures says that Jesus kept himself from knowing, and he continues to keep himself from knowing. You got to be God and man to do that sort of thing, right? To intentionally keep yourself from knowing about the end. When, how, he said it's all in the Creator's hands. It's all in the Father's hands. And Jesus will be obedient whenever it happens, whatever takes place. But he says, do not be afraid. And basically, if you see some things rumbling around, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just a foreshadowing of what will eventually happen on a grander scale. You don't have to freak out.
Goat thing. I mean,
What if we see that goat
If
thing?
you know something's gonna happen, if you see that.
Well, Neil, you're right. He said, if that goat-looking thing with 4 horns runs by your house, then you will know. Yeah. Then you will know the end is near.
It says do not be afraid, but I think if I saw that run by.
I know, I'm gonna have some nightmares just looking at that.
Yeah.
Hey, Joe,
Yeah.
I think those people were not looking to God, they were looking to the east.
Pretty interesting, Mark.
You know, I mean, they
Yeah.
were for hope
Good
and
call.
salvation, they were looking to God.
Yeah. So,
Looking to the world.
yeah. So, Mark. Wow, it's pretty deep, Mark. He says, I wonder if those people are looking to hope, like their supplication is to the beast of the world, and they're not actually looking to God. Yeah. Because like you can look to God anytime. It doesn't matter when, right? And that's not what they're doing.
Well, the beast also has a bunch of crowns on its head. It kind of looks like so. In my mind, like they're definitely going for that guy.
They're what?
They're definitely going for that guy. Like their line of vision is right towards the
The guy with the crown?
Hydra thing. Yeah.
Oh, you're saying yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I still can't figure it.
So the crowns are like, they're like the signs of power.
False
That we
prophet.
sure, yeah, a false prophet, the beast, it's all the same thing. The harlot in Revelation, the beast, Babylon, the false prophet. It's just different words and different symbols for the same thing. It's when you and I, as humans, get together and create these systems that we then look to for protection and guidance in their royalty, or their might, or their power, or their kingliness, right? They all have crowns. And they look good. There's 10 of them, right? It looks really good, really strong, really powerful. If I depend on this thing that we have all come up with together and set in stone to protect us and guide us, then I can just give my power to it. But then it starts, just like we would say personally, right? We're talking about systems here, but just like we would say personally, when you, like the devil, like when you start to slip into something, and we would say the devil or sin always takes you farther than you meant to go, right? Have you heard old Baptist preachers say something like that? Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the same thing. When you give over your power to the might of what we think humanity can create, then it takes you further than you want to go. And you end up having to sell your soul kind of thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. But thanks, Neil. I actually think that's a great idea.
Watch out for the goat.
Yeah. 4-horned goat. So I think that there's this aspect where the thing that the people then relied on, the temple, for being their center of God's might and power, being gone, like that is an end. And that's a pretty big end. When the greatest thing in your country is torn down and any cedar logs in it are burned and everything is rubble, and it was 150 feet tall, like shining bright, like that's gone. That is an end. And like it changes your whole world. And you have to come up with new ways of relating to God, recognizing that thing just is gone and it's not there anymore. It's like a huge hole in the system, or there's a huge hole in your mind of what life is about. And so what fills it, right? Okay. So it's white stone, and then for 2,000 years, the people predict this is it. This is it. Here's the time. I remember when I was a kid, just because it's so catchy, there was this guy in 1988 who was doing something with numbers and all kinds of stuff, and like 1988 was going to be the end. And I remember this so well because do you remember Muncie Central won 8 in 1988, right? 8 and 88. Remember those license plates? It's 8th high school championship in 88. So I just remember, oh, there was also this guy that was saying, this spiritual leader that was saying 1988 was going to be the end. But just pick anybody in any time, right? You can sell a lot of books saying that kind of junk.
In 2000, I remember.
Yeah. Oh, the millennium. Oh, there you go, millennium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody thought at midnight,
Something. Yeah.
New Year, it was gonna be the end of the
Yeah.
world.
As if our clocks and dating mean anything, right? Yeah. I mean, our yearly date, the dating that we use, as if that means anything.
But I think when the end of times come, evil is more like they show these fantastic looking
Mm-hmm.
creatures to draw your attention,
Mm-hmm.
but evil out there is not that. No, it's creeps up. It's like the signs won't be like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're
Right.
very like
Keep going.
say when somebody leads you into something, it's very easy sometimes because it just creeps up on you.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and I think that a couple things that you mentioned remind me.
Because I've been drawn into that, and
Yeah.
it doesn't look like a goat, and it doesn't have horns, but it's just as evil,
Yeah,
you know?
it doesn't have horns, but it's just as evil.
Looks like a birthday.
Yeah.
They can squeeze.
For a Harry Potter birthday cake or something.
It's enticing.
Yeah. Something that you said makes me think that in the New Testament, the word end times means everything after Jesus. So technically, you and I are living in the end times because there's no more salvation part to happen in the history of humanity or the world except for him to return. Right? There's nothing else that has to happen. Creation, Old Testament, New Testament, 2,000 years after, kind of have a gap. We don't really know what happens between Genesis 12 and 11. You know what I'm saying? So, like, we live in the end times. But that doesn't mean that there are those creatures running around unless they look interesting and enticing and draw us away. Sometimes I think we should, like money, political power, power in any sense. Like, somebody can have like can be the lowest person on the totem pole and like try to lord their power over somebody else. We all do it. Like we always try to be better than someone else or have more power than someone else sitting next to us. Like that's a constant part of life, and that creeps up on you before you know it.
Well, it's like what you read about the false prophet, or Jesus said you would be tempted by people that they pretend to be me,
Mm-hmm.
but don't follow them.
Yeah.
That's kind of like
Right. So you're going to have spiritual leaders, preachers,
Presidents.
pastors,
president.
presidents, any type of leaders, right? And when they move over and switch into telling you certain things, they're actually taking the place of God in your life. Like nobody should say that to you except the Lord, or nobody should lead you into XYZ except the Lord. And they start taking that, and so there's lots of folks, throughout all of history, who have tried to take the place of God in our lives. Yeah.
And the more they lead you, the further away you get
Yeah.
from God.
But He saves.